Hi, I'm Matt Wheeler, and in this documentary we'll be discussing the topic of gluten. Some of the areas we'll be covering will be what is gluten, how gluten affects people, who's affected by gluten, and how the food industry has adapted to people on a gluten-free diet. So, what is gluten?
Well, gluten is a couple of proteins plus starch. It's what you find in wheat, oats, barley, rye, and maybe some other places, I don't know, I'm not really an expert on that aspect of it. But it's a protein, and lots of seeds have that sort of protein because when seeds scatter, they need a bit of food to feed themselves until they find some place to lie and get nutrient from the soil. So it's a food.
Now I'm going to give you a few examples of products that contain gluten. Bread, crisps, pizzas, snacks, breaded products such as fish fingers and chicken nuggets often have gluten in them on the breadcrumbs. Who is affected by gluten?
Well, it's a good question. There's a lot of controversy about it. Many people think that it's just people who have diagnosed celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disease where the body's own immune system starts to attack the gut. But it's quite clear to me that and many other people, that there's many more people who are gluten sensitive and who are adversely affected by having too much gluten. A lot of people can tolerate a little bit, but not too much. And there's an interesting story attached to that, really. I mean, we're surrounded by grass here. Here's grass seed. And what we grow nowadays on industrial scales are cultivated seeds, wheat, oats, barley, rye, and then we refine it. So instead of just having a few seeds, as we used to when we were hunter-gatherers, we now have loads of them. And you go into a supermarket and there's whole gondolas full of wheat-based or rye-based stuff. But if you were a hunter-gatherer and you had to gather enough seeds to feed yourself the same amount of wheat as we have, you'd spend all day doing it. So we perhaps vastly overconsume wheat and other gluten-containing foods compared to what we're genetically adapted to. Because remember, we were hunter-gatherers 10,000 years ago.
What are some of the effects on people when they eat gluten?
Well, for most people, nothing, except as food. But for some people who are sensitive, you get the physical symptoms of bloating and farting, forgive me, and diarrhea and things like that. But and a sense of weakness and lethargy and a feeling just sleepy all the time. But also you can get behavioural symptoms, which is essentially people, their frustration tolerance goes down, so they can't concentrate so well, they get impulsive and careless, and some children especially get quite aggressive as well, and are difficult. So the effects are varied, but essentially there are some physical effects, the gastrointestinal ones mainly, and feeling tired and lethargic, and the behavioural effects, which is usually lethargy, but can be aggression as well.
Is there a way to counter being gluten-free, apart from being on the diet?
I don't know of it. Probably you might find some people who do suggest some other ways of dealing with it, but I don't know it. What is the case is some people, as I said before, can tolerate a little gluten, but not too much. And so what people often do is they remain strict at home, so that when they go out, it's not too bad. But there are lots of people where just a tiny amount of gluten has an adverse effect, and there they have to be really strict. But I don't know of any other treatments of it.
Are young patients finding it easier to keep to their exclusion diets now that gluten-free food is readily available in supermarkets?
I think compared with 10 years ago, yes. And it's true, as you say, that there are lots of these foods available now, thank goodness. And so yes, it is easier, but still you have the sort of social problem. You go out somewhere, people cook with flour, with wheat products or barley or whatever, and so people have to say no, I can't take it, or else I'll dash to the loo or something, whatever it is.
10 years ago, when I first started the gluten-free diet, I felt that there really wasn't much out there in terms of gluten-free products. Everything I ate had to be made from scratch to avoid eating gluten. Going out with friends, birthday parties was a problem too, because the people who owned these restaurants didn't know what gluten was, or not many of them did anyway, and nearly all the time the menu had nothing gluten-free on it. So I'd either end up eating nothing or eating gluten, which would make me feel ill later. However, over the past 10 years, I feel that the food industry has picked up on gluten and has improved a lot over the past 10 years. For example, most chain stores and supermarkets now have aisles or shelves specifically for gluten-free food products to sell, which makes life for me and other gluten-free sufferers a lot easier. An example of this would be bread. 10 years ago, you couldn't find bread like this. The only way you could have gluten-free bread was by making it yourself, and it was horrible, trust me. This stuff actually tastes alright. Another great example would be ready meals. 10 years ago, there were barely any gluten-free ready meals available. Now, chain stores, supermarkets have hundreds of these, all available in their shops, which makes life a lot easier. Something else I've also noticed over the past 10 years is that now most products, individual food brands, drink brands, they now have a gluten-free allergy symbol on them if they are gluten-free, so you can easily pick up whether they are gluten-free or not, which makes life a lot easier as well. Rather than just looking in the gluten-free section, you can just search the product and see if it's got a symbol on it. Now that you know the facts about gluten, and you've heard my opinion on what's changed over the past 10 years for gluten, what do you think will change in the next 10 years?